How's it going? I'm Jared Gillis. Today, we're looking at a 12-volt inverter compressor AC for RVing. There's been a flood of new ACs for RVing, but we want to look at who is this for, what are the pros and cons, and what is involved with this. We're going to dive in and see the things that I'm excited for with this and the things that might be drawbacks depending on your setup. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. So the first main question that comes to mind is, why would I even care about a 12-volt AC with an inverter compressor? And the thing that gets me excited for it is that it's going to be great for off-grid. You're going to be able to run your AC directly off of your batteries. You don't even need an inverter or a generator to be able to have AC when you don't have shore power, when you're off-grid. And it should be more efficient because you're not having any of those conversions. You're just going straight from the batteries to the AC. But we're going to see how that all comes together as we dive into this deeper. Now, one of the first things that I notice is just how low of a profile, but how wide this thing is. It is low for a low profile unit, but it's also a lot wider. So you'd have to make sure that you have the space on your roof in order for this to fit. But then on the unit itself, you can see the fan for the condensing coils to expel that heat out is going to go straight up. And the evaporative coils that are going to be cooling the inside are insulated by the foam enclosure. And then we have the inverter compressor, but that's not the thing that caught my eye the most. I have never seen this on an RV AC. They made this straight out of the gate serviceable. Usually they're a sealed unit. So technically, yes, an HVAC guy could come out and try and put on valves and try and be able to fix the system, but usually it's not worth it. What it's going to cost for a guy to come out, put valves on it, warranty it, do all the work, you're at the cost of a new AC. But this one, you can see that the lines are replaceable. We have a valve on there to be able to recharge the system. So if this line goes out or the compressor goes down or something else goes out on this, it is a serviceable unit from what I can see. The parts are in there for it to be serviceable, and I wish more ACs out there were like that. So that's pretty cool. But on that note, we need to connect this up and see how well it does cool. As far as the install, there were things that I liked and didn't like about it. One of the things that I liked is seeing the direct duct idea, the way they would couple together from the upper portion to the lower portion. They'll slide together depending on the thickness of your roof to keep that cold air from mixing with the return air and making it more efficient. One of the things that I didn't like and struggled with were the bolts. They're all thread, which isn't bad, but they weren't long enough for our roof, which is a very typical fifth wheel roof. It would only take about a day to get replacement bolts, but I couldn't get them locally because they were metric. They also have a smaller tolerance for the length of the bolts, and it looks like I needed about 160 millimeter length in order to make it work really well. Running through all my options to make it work wasted a fair amount of time. But that moved me right into my next problem that I found, is that I ran into that channel duct not connecting. That piece that I liked that was going to be able to slide together actually left a gap in there because my roof was too thick. So I was able to use aluminum tape to connect them, but would want a better solution long term. But it's not going to hold us back from seeing how this performs. The third thing was the screws that attach the interior portion were too long and pushed the assembly away from the ceiling as you screw it together. It's not a huge deal. It was just one more thing to see that this is probably more suited for a setup like a Class B camper van, and it isn't all that refined for other types of installs. But one thing that I did like is that it all came together. You didn't have to order multiple parts, the AC and the interior part, and because of that, it's a ductless option only, which I think is a good call for a unit this size. This is an 11,000 BTU AC. But with all that said, probably the biggest task for installing an AC like this is getting the 12-volt power to the unit itself, which we'll touch on more in a minute after we look at how it performs. Because this is really the part of the AC that matters. The install, once you install it and it's working, it's going to be working. You don't have to install it twice. But we want to see how efficient it is. How comfortable does it make it on the inside of the RV? How well does it do at cooling? Which brings us to today's sponsor, which is RV Mattress. Because having a comfortable mattress for an RV can make a huge difference. If you don't have a comfortable one, I would look at RV Mattress options. They have 4 lines of mattresses, and you can dial it in to exactly the size and the space requirements and the firmness, the softness, whatever you like that fits your personal style for what you want in a mattress, you can find in there with lots of options. That's one of the things that impressed me when looking at the mattress. It's not just a one size fits all, and you can dial it in and look at exactly what you need for your space and your comfort. You have it delivered right to your site. It comes compressed, it's easy to move into the RV. unroll it, take the plastic off, and you can see it like come to life and take shape. And I love that it's designed and assembled in their Arizona factory. They have a 120-night sleep trial. They have a limited lifetime warranty, free shipping, factory direct quality and pricing. So if you want to save 30% on a mattress of your choosing, click on the link, but be sure to put in the code AllAboutRVs and save 30% at RV Mattress by Brooklyn Bedding. So now let's get back to the use of the AC, because right now it's running on Eco. It also has turbo mode. There's a decent amount to unpack. So let's get to the performance of the AC. Now, for starters, the performance for sound is great. On low, it's at 41 dB. At fan speed 2, it's at 42 dB. At fan speed 3, we're at 44 dB, and at 4, we're at 47 dB. It does have a turbo mode, and that cranks it up to 51 dB. And if you're going to be comparing that to the Coleman Mach that came on our RV, at low, that's at 52, and at high, it's at 53. It's not a quiet AC. And right now, the 12-volt AC is on. You can hardly hear it. It's pretty similar to the Gree Toso one that we've reviewed in the past. The numbers are extremely similar. The difference is the Gree is a 15,000 BTU AC, and this is a 10,000 BTU AC. But as far as sound, there's two things that I'm not a huge fan of. Number one is this beep when you're using the remote or the control panel. It's one of the louder beepers that we've come across for devices inside the RV. Then the second one is being able to have the fins for the air distribution be moving, because that helps mix the air inside the RV, which does help it cool better. But when you hear the fins moving, they definitely have a sound. It's really not bad. You can hear it, but if it was directly above your bed and sounds bother you when you're trying to go to sleep and you have the AC running, it is something you'd want to be aware of. So next up, I wanted to run it through some scenarios and see how this works in real life, how it performs on the RV. So the first one is at night. So I wanted to set the AC to 70 degrees at 8:52 in the evening, as if we're going to bed. The evening night temperatures were going to be from 77 to 73 degrees. And this is on a 300 amp hour battery, just a single battery. I checked it at 10:20 at night, it was at 90%. But then at the next day, it had been running for 10 and a half hours. Our battery was at 58%. We had used 125 amp hours. Inside the RV, it was at 67 degrees. Outside was 70 degrees. This is a great test for being able to have an AC be able to cool the inside of the RV at night so that you can sleep and not feel like you're sweating while you're sleeping. And only using 125 amp hours, I thought was a win for something like this, having it in a bedroom of an RV. Now, something to note is the fan does run continuously. I know there's opinions and preferences on each side of this, but just important to know that the fan does run continuously. Now, something I did like to see is it was kind of going into more of a maintenance mode, maintaining that temperature inside of the RV. You can see that compressor kind of pull back, so it's only pulling less than 300 watts in order to be able to keep cooling the inside of the RV to maintain that temperature, which you don't get that with a normal standard compressor out there on other ACs. You get that with this, the Chill Cube turbo units that have that inverter compressor inside. So nice to see. That's what helps make this unit more efficient. But I wanted to take it a step further and see how this does during the day. During the heat of the day, how does this perform? And I will say that it didn't do well with our size of an RV on either of these tests. I tried it on Eco, I tried it on the normal mode, and both times the temperatures came up uncomfortably on the inside of the RV. The temperatures were high. They were over 90 degrees, so it was a 93 degrees outside, 90.1 on the inside of the RV. That was trying it on Eco. The second time that I tried it, we had run it for about 4 hours. It was 94 degrees outside, and it was 86.8 inside the RV. If you look at the air coming out of it, it's still cold. It's even very comparable to what's coming out of the Chill Cube. It just can't keep up with the volume. Just needed a larger unit for our size of an RV, which isn't a bad thing. It's just good to know. So let's boil this down to the things that I liked and I didn't like about this unit for the way that it performed in these real world scenarios for RVing. Number one, this was just way too big of a space for this unit. It was kind of unfair to put it through that, but that is the size of our RV. What would have been better is if we were to install this on our bedroom. So this is meant for a small class B or a truck camper. I think it would work much better in an RV that size. If we would have had it installed in the bedroom in that much smaller space, we could have seen seeing those efficiencies really kick in, because this is a really efficient unit with the compressor that's in there. There's not really any conversion. It's going from the 12-volt battery to a 12-volt unit, so you're not having any losses in that area as well. But in order for it to kind of hit those efficient marks, it needs to be able to maintain the temperature rather than trying to always fight for that temperature. Because that compressor in there is able to dial down and kind of just give you that real low amp draw in order to just maintain that temperature. So that for me is a big takeaway. It can be efficient if it's in the right size space and scenario. You try and put it in a space that's too big and you go into hotter temperatures, it's just not going to perform that well, because that's not what it's meant for. It's meant for the smaller spaces to be able to maintain that temperature in there. The next point also leans it towards a smaller RV, and that's because it's a 12-volt unit. It's going to have a much larger cable. When you look at the cables that are going to be feeding power to this unit and you compare it to a regular AC model, those wires are going to be staggeringly different. And so you have a length of wire, and yes, you can extend, you can go up in the size of your wire, but it is a little bit difficult in this unit to upsize that wire in order to run it longer distances. You don't want to just use the same gauge wire as you increase the distance, and using that larger gauge wire is hard to get those terminals inside of the AC in order to supply that power. So it becomes a little bit of a challenge. So if you're sticking with the length of wire that this comes with is the ideal situation. And if you look at the length of wire, we just ran it right through a duct down and to a battery, and you can see that that's not all that far from the AC unit. If we were to try to run the power from this unit all the way to the front of the RV and drop that down to our battery bank in the front, we'd have to have a much larger gauge wire in order to get the power all the way back there. So a 12-volt unit needs to be already located close to where your battery bank is going to be. You don't want to have a large distance when you're trying to set it up, which again leans it to having a smaller RV, which this is going to be ideal for. Which brings us to another point. I do like that it is on the 12-volt system. So if you didn't want to stress out or use more of your inverter on the RV, this is taking no taxing draw off of the inverter when you're using it in the RV, which is great. Gives you more ability to be able to run the microwave or whatever else you need to run on the inside without even ever tapping into the capacity of the inverter. But that brings up another point of, if you are going to be connected to power often, this is going to be using a lot of your converter in order to power the air conditioning. So this is definitely going to be an air conditioning for somebody that likes to be off-grid the majority of the time. This is not one that I would want on the RV if I'm going to be at an RV park on full hookups all the time. It just kind of puts more strain on charging that battery through your entire system, and it'd be better to go with another AC. So this is going to be good for a small RV and somebody that likes to be off-grid the majority of the time. And you have an install location that's going to be close to your battery bank so that you don't have a long run of larger gauge wire. So I hope some of this information helps you out, seeing something that probably came from the trucking industry over to the RV industry and how it plays well inside of RVs and what scenarios something like this will shine, and some areas where you probably shouldn't use it. But that's why we do this. We want to see where this is going to work well and where it's not going to work well. All that so you can make an informed decision. But if you were to ask me, our 12-volt AC is going to be the new norm, the new fad in RVing, I just don't think that's going to be the new normal. I do think it's very nice for the section of RVing where you have a smaller RV and you like to camp off-grid the majority of the time. That's going to be the niche that this is for. But for your standard RVs coming off the line, I think we're going to see more inverter-driven compressors, but it's going to be more like the Chill Cube or the Turbo. There's a few of them out there now. We're going to see more of that and more competition in that space, which is a great thing. So anyways, I think that's going to do it for today. Hope this video helped you out and seeing some of the pros and cons with this unit. So as always, if we don't see you on the road, hopefully we will see you next video. Take care.